see.
Where?
It's fine, it's recording. I already pressed it.
Viv.
Hey guys, it's Viv. This week I've decided to do a series of videos covering the topic of refugees from Syria and surrounding countries. So I am a student in England. I study German, and then as part of my year abroad I've been placed here in this town, in this area. You know, coming to Germany and encountering these refugees was a sort of really bizarre experience. It's because in England, you know, we're this tiny island at the west of Europe and we're our own isolated place. We're so far detached from this refugee crisis, and then coming here and actually meeting those people really just kind of made it personal, made it real.
And I think it's very nice of you that you give them a voice to speak to England.
Yeah, I mean, it started off as just curiosity, and then I thought, why don't I actually get those people to tell the stories? And I thought it would be better and more significant coming from the actual person instead of me just talking to a camera for 5 minutes every Friday. Yeah.
Actually, the conflict started in Syria in 15 March 2011 until now. In Syria we have 20,000 of missing people, 2,000 of hostage, about 85 of soldiers from all the reflex side, 1.5 casualties, and 100,000 of civilian died, 10,000 of children, 6,000 of women killed there. Because of these numbers, people in Syria began to run away from the war to the nearest safety countries like Turkey, Lebanon and Jordan.
Over the last months, I got to know several people from several countries who fled their country, and I listened to their stories, and that made me really sad to hear the situations in their countries and what they endured to get to Germany. I hope all these countries and all these people will find peace.
People think to migrate to Europe, and the story starts from Egypt and Libya, with a big boat sent across the sea to Italy. There was a lot of victims in the sea. A lot of persons died there. After the tightly controlling the Mediterranean Sea, they changed the smugglers changed their activities to Turkey to send people across the Aegean Sea, and with the small rubber boats, they was putting about 50 or 60 persons in the same boat, with children, women, and old people, and send it to the nearest island in Greece. They was standing on in the coast and bring someone to drive the boat and say, "This is the light of the island, you should go like this." And the person start going, and person arrive after that to Greece, waiting for the papers to complete the journey. They go after that to Athena, after Athena Macedonia, then to Serbia, after that Hungary, and to arrive to Europe after that. The journey very bad because the person suffer from cold weather and hot weather. They sleep in the streets, and they spending a lot of money. After that, they arrive and start building the new life here.
I am from Aleppo, and I was studying at university there. There is no electricity or water in this city. There are too many problems with merchants in Aleppo, because if they have food, clothes, and things people need but can't access because of the war, they will sell the goods at high prices. There has been no electricity in the city since 2013, and people have started making big generators and selling their energy once a week. It's really expensive. The price is too expensive and there is no work, so it's hard for people to afford it at all. My house was destroyed by bombs, so we left Syria and went to Lebanon. Then we went to Turkey by ship. After this, we went to Izmir and made a deal with smugglers. We stayed in Turkey for 10 days, and there were many smugglers there. They were all competing with each other, claiming to be the best smugglers there, in order to make money out of us. We even met a smuggler who was from my city, working for a Turkish man. All of the smugglers have their price. You can't find anyone who asks for less than $1,000. The smugglers could even be lying and could just take you and kill you to harvest your organs and sell them on the black market somewhere. After 5 attempts, we finally reached Mytilene in Greece. The situation in the camp was so bad. No bathrooms, no sleeping areas, just a small tent for 4 people in the middle of the forest. Then we took the tent from the camp and stayed on the coast of Mytilene. We waited for 3 days for them to give us the documents that would let us travel to Athens by ship. So we went to Athens and stayed there for about 3 days, and then we travelled to a village in Greece just outside Macedonia called Thessaloniki. After this, we went to a village in Macedonia and we travelled by foot to the first police centre there. The situation in Macedonia was also very bad, and it's very hard to get the papers from there to complete your journey. Because of the huge numbers, they just let us go without our documents. We finished our journey by train to the Serbia-Macedonia border. The journey was very long and dangerous because there were a lot of mafia cars taking people, and no one knew where they'd take them. We arrived at the camp in Serbia, and it was very crowded, and we had to wait for our papers in order to complete our journey. We were only allowed to stay for 72 hours in Serbia. After that, we went to Belgrade and stayed there so we could make a deal with smugglers. The lowest cost would be €1,500 per person, and I was with my family. So we made a deal and he put us into a car. We travelled by car to some place near Hungary. We spent about 4 hours walking and running to cross from Serbia to Hungary. After that, the smuggler put us into a car and we travelled to Vienna. The way from Vienna was pretty peaceful, and we completed our way to Germany via train to Munich. After that, they took us to a camp. The camp in Lower Saxony was so bad, and we had to wait a long time for them to send us to a proper home and to complete all our documents.
I left Syria in 2014. I traveled to Turkey down a road that was controlled by the Syrian Free Army. I was on this road for 3 days. The road was very dangerous because I walked through territory controlled by ISIS. After 3 days, I arrived in Turkey. After this, I traveled directly to Izmir. When I arrived in Turkey, I felt like God had given me a new life. I'd finished a large part of my journey. The road from Dara to Turkey is long. After I arrived in Izmir, I waited for 1 week because I made a deal with a guide to travel to Greece by boat. We made a deal with this guy and offered to give him more money if he didn't overcrowd the boat. When I arrived, I saw that there were around 45 others also boarding this boat. The boat was about 9 meters wide, and it could actually only hold 35 people. When I arrived at the first island in Greece, I decided to give myself into the police. The police gave me documents that enabled me to walk freely around Greece without the chance of being arrested for being a refugee. We left Greece and traveled to Macedonia, and then from Macedonia to Serbia. After Serbia, I traveled to Budapest in Hungary. The road from Macedonia to Budapest was too dangerous because I was walking in the forest and it was so cold. After I arrived in Budapest, I made a deal with another guy to take me to Germany. I waited in Budapest for 3 days for the guy to find a car. I was on the road for 6 hours to Germany. After I arrived in Germany, we went to a camp.
مشان الرجعة بس لترجع على سوريا انت شو مفكر انه ترجع ولا تستقر هون ولا
I do want to go back to Syria, but only when it's safe there. There are too many heavy weapons in Syria right now, and no one knows who's using them.
I left Syria because I was required to join military service. I was worried about the situation in Syria and about my family. If I were to join the Syrian army, someone from a different side might hurt my family, and if I were to join, I could die there. I went from Damascus to a region near Aleppo called Al-Zoba. I crossed the border and it was very dangerous. After that, I arrived in Turkey. I made a deal with smugglers from Syria, and they had a big truck full of sheep that people could hide behind. But they lied to us and blackmailed us into giving them more money along the way. When we arrived at the first point in Turkey, they told us to get out of the car and gave us directions to go by foot so that the Turkish army wouldn't catch us. After we ran through, the cars would pick us up again on the other side of the border and take us to the first village in Turkey nearest the border. After this, we went to Mersin to take a ship to Italy. But the problems with the ship was that we needed about 15 days travel time, and that's too long. So we changed our plan. Instead, we went to Izmir, and from there, we went to Bodrum. We made a deal with smugglers there, and he took a lot of money from us. He put about 40 of us at the bottom deck of the yacht, and then another 5 women on top. We spent 13 hours in the sea, looking for an island where he could drop us off so that we wouldn't be caught by the Greek Coast Guard. The bottom deck was so crowded we were basically suffocating. We struggled, but we made it. We stayed on this island where no one could reach us until the Greek Coast Guard took us to another island so we could go to the police centre so we could get our documents and go to Athens. They gave us our papers and we travelled to Athens. I tried about 15 times to then travel by plane, but I couldn't. They caught me and took me to the police centre, and then they just let me go. After that, we just went the usual way to Macedonia. But I was travelling around Christmas time. The weather was so cold, and I had to spend a night in the forest in Macedonia. After that, we took the bus to Kumanovo in Macedonia. There was a lot of mafia there. They tried to rob us, but they couldn't because we were too fast. After this, we went to a small place between Macedonia and Serbia. The Serbian police caught us and made us go back to Macedonia. So we tried to cross again and we made it to Serbia. After that, we went to Belgrade and made a deal with some smugglers, and we wanted them to take us to Vienna via Hungary so that we wouldn't have our fingerprints taken. In Serbia, we ran to the car, which was really small, and there was 11 of us in this one car. The atmosphere in the car was very bad. Then we arrived to Vienna, and all the people who'd been with us in the car went our separate ways. Some of them went to Sweden, and some of them went with me to Germany.
My name is Mohammed Faluji, and I'm a Palestinian Syrian. This is my son Taim. He is 3 years and 2 months old. I came with him to Germany. I lived in a district in the south of Damascus. This area was for the Palestinian Syrian people. The problem started with the Free Syrian Army and Jabhat al-Nusra. Now, 90% of families in this area have left the region. I left with my family, with my wife, and my son Taim. After this, I went to my wife's family's home. I went from Damascus to Lebanon by car, and then went by plane to Turkey. At this time, Palestinian Syrians were allowed to travel to Turkey, but then after that, it was forbidden. The situation now is that you need documents, like a visa, to go to Lebanon. I traveled to Turkey and landed in Sabiha airport. I made a deal with smugglers to find a flight. I never planned to go by foot because I had my son with me. I didn't want to put me and my son in a dangerous situation, so I made this deal. My first plan was to fly to the Netherlands, but they changed our plans and told us he'd make reservations for me and my son on a flight to Italy. The smugglers gave money to the staff at the airport, which made our situation much easier. I arrived in Rome airport. The smugglers had told me that I would be able to pass without having my fingerprints taken, but when I arrived, I had to have my fingerprints taken. At first, I refused to do this. I spent about 7 days in Rome, and I would watch other people have their fingerprints taken and be released from the airport before me. So eventually, I agreed to give over my fingerprints. In the end, I had no other choice because my son became ill. We'd spent so many nights sleeping on chairs in the airport, and they promised to bring me a doctor for my son, but they didn't bring anyone. These 7 days were awful. We were so tired from sleeping rough in the airport and thinking about our journey. I didn't want to stay in Italy. I wanted to go to Germany. I asked them to take me to a camp in Italy. After that, I intended to complete my journey to Germany. They told me I could go to a camp or to Germany. They just wanted my fingerprints. Otherwise, I couldn't do anything. I didn't know why I had to give them my fingerprints in order to do anything.
Finished.
Finished.
After being in the airport in Italy, I actually stayed in a big church in the Marina region for about a week. I stayed there because my son was very sick. He had a high temperature. After this, I traveled by train to Germany, which meant my journey from here wasn't very hard. I went by train from Bologna to Munich, and from there I traveled to Bremen. I stayed there for 2 days, and then got transferred to Brunswick. From there I was transferred to Kirchhorsten. And after being there for a year and 2 months, I finally have all my documents, meaning I'm allowed to stay here legally for 3 years. And now, everything is good now. So, I'm married and I have 2 sons. The oldest, Taim, is here with me, and my other son is called Mayar. He and my wife are still in Syria, and I will bring them to Germany soon. They're still living in Syria, and Syria has changed a lot. Even when I was in Syria, the country was changing a lot because of the war. For example, if you want to go somewhere around 15 minutes away, these days it'll take around 2 hours. This is because it's so crowded and because of all the army checkpoints. Everything there costs so much money, and the salary in Syria is not enough for people to live on anymore. A lot of the time, my wife calls me from Syria and tells me that she can't even go to the market or bring milk home for our son, or that she can't buy food because of the problems between all the different people who are fighting each other. Now in Syria, there are so many groups fighting each other, and no one knows who their enemy is anymore. No one knows why they are still fighting. For a new leader in Syria, for oil, or for anything else. I left my wife and son in Syria because it was too expensive to bring them with me. The prices of the smugglers are so crazy from Turkey to Europe. I brought my son here because I thought the documents would come through faster, because I have my small boy with me. But I was wrong. If you were to bring your son here, or if you travel alone, it's all the same. The people responsible for my case, the person who decides whether I get my documents, let me stay in Germany for a whole year while we worked out whether I'd be allowed to stay in Germany for longer. A lot of people who have had their fingerprints taken in Italy or Hungary or other countries, they received their papers before me. The problem is related to the people in charge of the refugees' cases. I tried so hard to communicate with them and tell them that my family is in Syria, and to get them to bring my family here too. Now it's very difficult to bring your family from Syria because you have to wait around 10 months to make an appointment at the embassy in Lebanon or Turkey. And now I'm looking for a way to bring my family from Syria. In the end, I took my documents, my visa, and my passport, but it took me a long time. As I said, it's related to the person in charge of my case, the person who decides whether we refugees get citizenship here in Germany.
Hi, that's it.
And now we finished this video. I met Viv here, and she is here from England for about a year as a part of her studies. She wanted to make a video about refugees, so we gathered some refugees to speak about their journeys. I thank God that we've arrived here, but a lot of our brothers from other ethnicities and religions are still in Syria. They're still in the war, among the bombs. I studied in high school in Syria, studying about the history about Arab and Muslim people. Our school taught us that we are all brothers. We share one land. But in this situation, the European countries have helped us more than the Arabian countries. The European people aren't like the people in the Arabian countries. The Syrian people are dying because of lack of food, the cold weather, like in Jordan. It's not like the camps in Lebanon, where the Lebanon army searched through for terrorists. And it's not like the Kuwaitian people are talking about politics and peace, who say that Syrians can't go to Kuwait because we're not like them, because we're not modern enough. The Syrian people can live in any country and can make it good. Here, in Europe, the Syrian people study and work and live like the European people. And if we can live in Europe, we can also live in the Arabian Gulf. I say this to these people who say that Syrian people cannot live in Kuwait. I hope you understand our feelings and our situation, and remember what Syria has done for the Arabian countries. You, the Arabian Gulf, are the first reason to make war in Syria. There are no Arabian countries that allow Syrian people to travel, especially to Mecca al-Hajj, especially Lebanon, the nearest country to us. We have to stay for hours at the checkpoint, and then the officer might even cut up our documents and throw them back in our face, refusing us entry. When the war started in Lebanon in 2006, Syria let the people take refuge in Syria, with good education and good housing. Syria has helped a lot of Lebanese people, Iraqi people, Palestinian people, and lots of other people. And now, no one from the Arabian countries is helping the Syrian people. The situation is so bad. No one will talk to us. No one will treat us like humans or communicate with us. Syria was the first Arabian country to gain independence, and its history goes back thousands of years before Christ. We had the first agricultural revolution in history, where man started making food from the land. That's not to brag or show off, but to tell Arabs that I should live better. And in the end, thanks to the Syrian people who are staying in Syria facing the war, and those in bad camps in Lebanon and Jordan. And thank you from your sons here in Europe.
هون ولادكم وولاد سوريا وابنكم مهران شهداء، شكرا لكم.